Hello and welcome to another episode of MNM Mindset and Muscle. In today's video, we are going to be continuing the series of 3 do's and 3 don'ts, my top 3 do's and don'ts for each muscle group. So we're going muscle by muscle to break down some of the biggest things that you can focus on and can do to maximize that body part, and some of the biggest mistakes that I see that can hold back and hinder your progress. So without further ado, let us jump into today's muscle group, which is going to be triceps. If you haven't already, you can check out my videos. We have covered back, we have covered shoulders, we have covered biceps, and today we are going to focus on triceps. So as always with these videos, before we start, I'm going to flash a quick muscle anatomy chart for triceps up on the screen, just so you can see the 3 heads of the tricep muscle and be better able to understand what exactly we're talking about as we break down these 3 do's and don'ts. So check this out just for a couple seconds. And now let's get into it. Do number 1, do train your triceps through these 3 positions. First off, we're going to start with some form of tricep pushdown. Any form of cable tricep pushdown is a great way to start your tricep workout and warm up the elbows. Make sure that you're setting yourself up correctly using proper, nice controlled tempo, especially on the negative, and then pressing down in a controlled fashion, squeezing at the bottom rather than just rapidly locking out your elbows or hunching over to use your body weight and momentum to generate drive. Notice how my elbows are staying directly at my side the entire time. They're not coming up to the front to bring the weight up higher, but this also brings the lats into play. So keep your elbows at your side as you see here and use nice controlled tempo. You can do this with a rope attachment, with a straight bar, with an easy bar, with a V handle here, or one arm at a time, whatever you find most effective for you, or for me, I vary between my 3 different tricep workouts. Then we're going to move into some form of heavy overload movement. This is going to be an exercise where you can use more weight and focus more on progressively overloading the muscle. All right, so this is the overload movement, which usually involves lying prone either on the floor, as you see here, or on a bench. This would be your skull crusher movement, your weighted dips, your close grip bench press, reverse grip bench press, dumbbell skull crusher, anything where you can really go heavy and focus on that overload. These are known as dead skulls here, where you set up in a skull crusher formation, but you're actually going to bring the weight down to the floor, stop just briefly at the bottom, and then drive back up. I find this to be much better on my elbows, as anytime I find form breaking down, I can rest pause the weight on the floor for a bit. This also allows me to focus more on extending up and back, keeping tension on my triceps, rather than turning it into a pullover movement. And then we're also going to train from a stretched position with an overhead extension movement. And the overhead triceps movement is the finale. So you can do this with the dumbbell, with an easy bar, or as shown here, with a cable. I like to use the rope attachment. I'll do as many repetitions as I can where I can pull the rope apart slightly at the top, as you can see here, to further emphasize the contraction. The stretch, though, this exercise is all about the stretch, getting that full stretch behind your head. You don't want to short the form and turn this into a choppy short shoulder press just for the sake of moving more weight. As soon as you can't get any more while bringing the ropes apart, just keep the ropes mashed together, pump out a few more repetitions. When you can't get any more, I also like to do a few partials to failure and then hold the stretched position for a few seconds. While each of these 3 movements are going to target and train the triceps effectively, they are going to stimulate different parts of the tricep a little bit more effectively than others. For example, with the overhead tricep extension, you're stimulating a little bit more of the long head, the inner head of the triceps, that you really get that good stretched position on. So the way I like to structure my tricep workouts is to start with a push down movement as a good warm up for the elbows and a good builder of the mind to muscle connection for the triceps. Then I move into a heavy mass building movement, whether that be skull crushers, close grip bench press, weighted dips, something of that nature, and then finish off with an overhead tricep extension movement. Now this again depends on whether you train triceps once a week or twice a week, whether you train them at the end of, say, a chest workout, or if you train them with an arms workout. All of this can vary the volume, the intensity, the rep range, the style that you train triceps. But I always recommend including at least one of each of those three angles in your tricep routine. Our first do not is going to be do not go so heavy that you can't get a good connection with the muscle. Now this can apply to any muscle group as far as good advice goes, but this is the first time, I believe, the first muscle group where I'm going to include it as a top 3 do not. And this is because triceps are very easy to allow other muscle groups to come into play and take over. For example, if you're doing a tricep pushdown movement and you go too heavy, not only will your shoulders and your lower chest want to take over on the exercise, but you feel much less connection to the triceps, and you have the potential for building tendinitis in the elbows from using bad form and just slinging the weight around. Once you reach to the point where you can't connect with your triceps and feel a really good squeeze and be able to control the weight, you're going too heavy. Go as heavy as you can while still being able to build up that pump and burn in the triceps. As soon as you start to feel your shoulders or your chest more than the triceps, it's time to stop that exercise, either back off the weight or end at that rep range right there. Now this applies to the compound movements too. For example, close grip bench press. You do want to go heavy. You do want to focus on progressive overload. But if you get to the point where you're feeling it more in your chest or your shoulders, you've gone too far. Next on the do list kind of ties into the order of exercises from our first do. And the second one is going to be do warm up your elbows before training triceps. Especially as you get stronger on your movements, this becomes very important to preventing tendinitis and allowing you to be able to train pain-free while progressively overloading. This is something that I have dealt with in the past before, where I've trained very heavy, build up to a strong point with tricep pushdowns, close grip bench press, dipping movements, and my elbows get sore. As soon as I started faithfully spending an extra 5 minutes or so warming up my elbows before getting into heavy pressing movements, that pain went away and is no longer a problem. So using a resistance band to doing some light overhead tricep extensions, some light pushdowns, doing single arm, a few sets of single arm cable tricep pushdowns before you get into your heavier sets. These are great ideas to help prevent those elbow issues and allow you to continue to progressively overload and train heavy. Because believe me, nothing is more frustrating than going into the gym knowing you have the strength to overload on a triceps exercise, but your elbows are shot and there's pain in there that is just distracting and taking away from the connection in the movement and your ability to train maximally. Do not, number 2, do not use a full range of motion. Now that is kind of a clickbaity thing to say because you do want to use a full range of motion, but only as far as the triceps are concerned. This is a big mistake I see a lot of times in the gym when people are doing tricep extensions and they use such a full range of motion, they bring the weight almost all the way up to the top to where their elbows are leaving their sides and the weight is coming all the way up to their chin before moving down into the next pressing movement. What that's doing is that's allowing the lats to engage and come into that first part of the movement, helping you to swing the weight down with the bigger, stronger muscle group. You want to keep your elbows stationary, only bend at the arms, come up as high as you can, maybe to lower to mid chest, and then driving back down to the bottom portion. This applies also to exercises such as the close grip bench press. You do want to use a full range of motion, but if you come all the way down to where the bar is touching your chest, oftentimes that will stretch the chest and cause it to come into play. So I like to just come down to just below 90-degree bend in the elbows and then press all the way up, squeezing at the top. Same thing with exercises such as skull crushers, where you want to avoid completely locking out at the top, as this takes tension off of the triceps, or dips, where if you go too deep on the dipping movement, not only does it put your shoulders in a very vulnerable position, but again, that stretch on the chest can cause your chest to come into play and take over the exercise. So do use a full range of motion, but don't use a full range of motion for the exercise. Use the range of motion for the muscle, not for the exercise. A lot of this comes with practice going by feel, but if you have any questions on this further, feel free to reach out to me. The final do is do emphasize and prioritize your triceps if arm gains, big arms is your goal. Now, a lot of people think of the biceps when they think of the arms, and biceps are important, but unless your triceps are dominating your biceps, you often want to focus on the triceps more than the biceps. And this is because they take up roughly 2/3 of the upper arm mass as opposed to the biceps. So typically, you want to train triceps with slightly more volume than you would with the biceps. And by emphasizing them and getting them to grow, it really adds that thickness, roundness, and packs on the inches of the arms. So don't neglect your triceps. Unless they're dominating, I highly suggest if you have an arm day that you would train triceps first before biceps, or if you're supersetting that you would start with the tricep exercise and then pair it up with a bicep exercise afterwards. If you are training with a different split and you want to emphasize triceps, I would not pair them up directly after chest, but something a little bit less tricep recruiting, such as shoulders or back. Now, if your triceps are keeping up just fine, you can train them on a push day or after chest as well. But if they are lagging behind and you have difficulties bringing them up, I would train them on an arm day or after shoulders. Our final do not is do not be afraid to find what works for you rather than just listening to the conventional wisdom or spouted information of the masses or the muscle magazines or articles that you see online. This was critical for me bringing up my tricep development, as a lot of the articles and things that I read said skull crushers were the best mass builder for triceps. You should do skull crushers, emphasize skull crushers, all these variants of skull crushers. Now, skull crushers are a great exercise, but for me personally, I do not feel them if I start my exercise off with them, as I haven't warmed up my elbows yet, and I don't have that mind-muscle connection with skull crushers that I get with a cable tricep pushdown. So if I am doing skull crushers, I do them towards the end of my workout when I'm already pre-fatigued, my elbows are warmed up, I already have that mind-to-muscle connection online, and I'm able to get much more out of the exercise. So this can apply to any exercise. If somebody tells you close grip bench press is the absolute best mass builder for triceps and you try it, and even with proper form and practice, you feel it more in your chest or shoulders, then that means that exercise isn't for you. You can try different variations of the exercise as well. For example, free weight close grip bench press, I don't feel very much in my triceps at all. But if I do that same exercise in a controlled fashion on a Smith machine, it lights my triceps on fire and is a phenomenal exercise. So don't be afraid to experiment with different grips, different machines, and different exercises to find what you connect with and what works for you. Remember, it is good to do your research, whether online, with a coach, or in person, but you have to listen to your body's feedback. And if you don't connect with an exercise in spite of trying time and time again with good form, and you're not able to progressively overload or get that mind-to-muscle connection, that can become the definition of insanity, trying that exercise over and over again for years. I see that so often, people who have no chest bench pressing because they're sure that that's the best way for them to get a big chest because, hey, Arnold bench pressed and he had a massive chest. However, they'll be in the gym doing bench presses year after year and their chest makes almost no progress. It would be better for them to either adjust their grip or the feel of the movement or find a machine or different exercise that works better for them to build their chest. Just because it's conventional wisdom doesn't always mean that it's best for you. So experiment, listen to your body, take the feedback of that coach or that article and use it and apply it, and then you have to decide for yourself whether that's the best exercise for you. That is going to do it for the top 3 do's and don'ts for triceps training. As always, please let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions. I would be happy to address that. Or if you feel like there's anything that I left out that you have found important in your tricep training journey. I would love for you to share that with me and anybody else in the comment section that it may help. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And as always, I can't wait to see you all in the next video.